Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mount Tam Integration's Instrumental Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Shankin. I'm the program director of Tam Integration. We offer psychedelic integration and preparation coaching virtually all over the world right now. I would like to give a shout out and thanks to our hosts here, Deadhead Land. Thanks for having us again. And also to our tech crew at Livestream Remote. Please, follow everybody on Facebook, donate to everybody's Patreon page. I'm very excited to have our guest today, Spear of the Nation. Spear of the Nation recently collaborated with Decrim Nature, and released a theme song for them, which is pretty fantastic. If you don't know about Decrim Nature, they are the masterminds and the powerhouses behind the decriminalization of plant medicines in the city of Oakland. And we're going to hear a lot more about that today and really the other work that you do. I'm just really happy you're here, Spear. Thanks so much.
Hey, give thanks, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here. Shout out to all the people out there in the virtual world. Looking forward to seeing what we're about to unpack and get into, man. And, just ready to vibrate with you, bro.
Yeah. Well, usually what we start out, so the theme of the show is psychedelic origin stories of your favorite rock and roll superheroes. And so today that rock and roll superhero is you.
Wow.
So I'm wondering if you could share with us perhaps some of the pivotal experiences that has helped to create this powerful, radiant being that we are beholding with eyes of great love.
Right. Well, I think it's an interesting story. I would say just being connected to my cousin. My cousin is actually Imani, Uncle Imani from the far side. And just kind of being around that whole vibe in the early 90s around my brother kind of, I think, was the entry into the psychedelic world. You know what I mean? A lot of the far side music was heavily influenced by, marijuana, psychedelic use, having fun and kind of expanding your mind. So by default, I was just around. And, as a shorty, as a youngster, googly eyed, looking at all the celebrities, quote unquote, freestyle fellowship, various LA underground artists, Razzcast. I don't know if you're familiar, in that time, there was a big scene called Project Blow. And it was in LA. So this is a real big underground community. And even before that, just brothers and sisters in the community were just freestyling a lot, ciphering. And there was just a strong underground scene in LA. And from that birth, like I say, groups like the Far Side, Freestyle Fellowship, I think Alcoholic was around that time. So just giving you a backdrop of the era that I was birthed in. Through those experiences, I was able to engage in mushroom journeys, facilitated by my older brothers, primarily, and my older mentors in the hip hop community. And I think one of the most profound experiences was I had with my brother Jern I. And, we boiled some tea and we just really sat by the beach at the full moon. And, we was all excited around just building. Everything was very ritualistic with us, even down to, the roll-up process. We would always read a scripture, give thanks and praise, and set intention before we engage in any form of medicine. For one, just to strengthen the internal, but as well to set directions to the music that we wanted to do. A lot of the vibration was heavily influenced by Rastafarian culture, so just letting, a lot of the music and a lot of the sentiment of the hip hop that we made at that particular time, the music really had that backdrop. So long story short, we were out there probably about 5-6 hours, just silent. We left, drove silent, the next day, my brethren came back by the house and he had a picture drawn, right? And it was me as a superhero, it was him as a superhero with the full moon in the back. And then he was like Lunar Heights. And I looked at him like Lunar Heights. And that became the name of our group. In 2003, we dropped our first album. The group was formed in 96, though. This is out in LA. Shout out to my brother Jern I. My right-hand man in this. But then, I made the migration up to the Bay Area in early 2000, and we were just kind of bubbling on the underground scene. And in 2003, it's kind of when we dropped our first album, The Crescent Moon, and everything else is history. You know, I would say I've never really looked at the music as a way to kind of make money. It was really always therapy for me, and it was more of a ritual. You know, my father was a musician, my mother was an educator, so I think I'm just by default a hybrid of that combination. So
the name of your first band was actually inspired by that journey.
Yes, Lunar Heights.
And coincidentally enough, you two sort of self-styled yourself as superheroes.
Yeah, I mean, I was Spirit of the Nation. He was Jern, the Small Axeman. He was Fire, or excuse me, I was Fire. He was Ice. So we always played on these. You know, he was Iceman. I was the Human Torch. So we always had these aliases when we went on stage, like, you know, similar to Wu-Tang. I don't know, Method Man and Ghostface Killer always had, you know, these aliases, you know, whether it be Iron Man or, you know, the Iron Lung. And, you know, it was just hip hop culture, man. It was fun. We were young, you know, exploring.
Right. So it's fun, but at the same time, right, there's a certain sense of power that, you know, that comes from medicine. There's a certain amount of power that comes from creativity. And so, you know, I'm curious, like, what was sort of the mission? Because it's more, you know, it sounds like it's more than just a band, right? When an experience like that happens, it's not just like, oh, we're going to make music. It's we're going to make music that transforms and changes.
Well, you took the word out of my mouth. You beat me to the punch. So
I just want you to go deeper. I'm just setting you up.
Well, I think I bring that up to say is that we were vibrating on the same tone, because transformation was the key. We always knew music was a tool for our liberation. So that's kind of how we looked at it. When I'm looking at even like in the 60s, right? In the 60s and 70s, when you're looking at the jazz movements of like maybe Charles Mingus, Thelonious Monk, Sun Ra, like this is kind of what I grew up in. This is what I was listening to in the house. Aretha Franklin, Nina Simone. So for me, by default, music was always a tool for liberation, transformation, and expansion, right? Almost like the purest essence of creativity. And I think when we're talking about the plants and the plant medicine, we're talking about possibility and imagination, right? We're going to worlds that, you know, where we become just pure frequency. And that's kind of what music is vibration and frequency. Over time, you know, I always called myself a rapper or MC, but I think now, in essence, what I feel we always done was in essence, we were sound healers. Right. People would listen to the music and they would take something, whether it be a message, whether it be a vibration from the song, you know, even like this plant power to the people. Right. When we listen to this song, it sends a message that is more than the plant. And then really talking about what do we do beyond that peak experience? How do we integrate this information? Because that's the important part. I like that I see Tam integration, and I like that integration is in your tagline, because for me, that's one of the most important parts around the whole journey.
Right. And I think that's true as well. I mean, I'm still putting together experiences I've had. I'm still trying to live up to the ideals that have been shown to me in these journeys.
Yeah.
And, you know, things like this podcast is part of this. You know, the idea of this podcast is to have high-minded conversations about these topics in a way that's joyful and fun. Right. Yeah. As well as hopefully transformational and enlightening for people. A lot of times I lead integration circles, you know, every week. And a lot of times the people who come to integration circles need support. And that's what they're there for. Right. Sometimes people need support because they had a hard time. They need support because there's stigma and people don't have access to community. Right. So, you know, that sort of stuff. And so sometimes the groups, I mean, a lot of times we do laugh, you know, a lot of times the groups are super fun, but a lot of times the groups are also a little bit heavy. You know, people are digging into heavy stuff, and there's an amazing community that's there able to support them. And so my thought is like, how do we make these conversations more attractive to people who are having a great time? who maybe do have community and do have friends and are having really wonderful transformational experiences, but still would benefit from working stuff out with each other?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, once again, another great question. I think that's the key. And I think one thing that's come up for me over my experience, because I just have to be transparent with you. I'm from community, and I've worked in community very deeply and entrenched, as you saw on the website. But what I'm noticing is there's a psychedelic community, right? And the psychedelic community, I would say I haven't really been, quote unquote, a part of for very long, as far as community. Like, I know people that are engaged in psychedelics and, maybe even facilitate, but being a part of a community is different. And one thing I realized is we have to recognize that communities need healing first. You know what I mean? We have to recognize that, maybe I would benefit from some of these practices or taking a deeper dive, or even shifting that lens to mirror. For example, what I mean, for those, what I'm meaning is really looking through your mirror as you're looking through the world as a reflection of yourself, as opposed to just kind of everything that's out there. And I think it's just perfect timing. What you're talking about is perfect timing. So I think right now it's just a willingness. It's a willingness, and it's a willingness to be vulnerable as well as courageous, to step into these rooms, step into these spaces, to have these conversations. Because it's all around us, from what's happening in Portland, the uprisings. We're talking about structural racism. We're talking about defunding the police. We're talking about history of, just trauma in America, from not only slavery, but from just unprocessed, unpacked grief. I almost feel like America is grieving right now. And I mentioned this a while ago. Like, I think it's trauma, but I almost look at it as the process of grief. Right. And there is going to come a point where, we do transform this energy. You know what I mean? But I think it's going to take folks like you asking the questions like this, like, what is it going to take? But one thing what I would say to answer the question directly is going to take a little courage. Folks is going to have to step out of their way. You know what I mean?
Right.
And step to the table and honestly come with open heart and open mind. You know what I mean? And come willing to learn with a, empty your cup a little bit, you know what I mean? Just so it can be full, and hopefully you could leave with something a little more,
So you're trained in traditional Chinese medicine?
No, I'm actually, I guess what you could call it is radical healing is the framework that we've coined it. We've been engaging in what we call radical healing over the past, 20 plus years in our community.
Do you know why I asked that?
Why is that?
Well, because I've been thinking about this a lot and talking to people about, coronavirus is it's a respiratory thing. And, in traditional Chinese medicine, every organ has a pair of emotion, ones that's sort of like unresolved and ones that is resolved. And the emotion pair of the lungs is grief and courage.
Of the lungs.
And that's so deep. A lot of times, right? Because almost when you think about like sobbing and grieving, right? Like the crying and the tearing is like, is all like, you're heaving, right? That sort of thing. And
thank you for lifting that up. My brother is actually, he practices Chinese medicine, and he's an acupuncturist, and we definitely have conversations, and I'm familiar with a lot of the work around, the somatics, right? The somatics of trauma, how we hold our issues in our tissues. So definitely familiar with that work. So thank you for lifting that up around the lungs. But
will you tell us more about radical healing since you were starting?
So radical healing is in essence is a framework that says there's I don't want to say because harm's being done, this is happening, but unfortunately harm is being done, right? So we're living in a society where, I wish I had the diagram to show you, but we're living in a society where we have this social toxicity, is what we like to call it. It's social toxins that are basically raining down on us. And even with an umbrella, right? These social toxins can eat through the umbrella and get into our being and our essence. And what happens is we start to internalize some of these social toxins. Just for sake of conversation, can you name maybe one or two social toxins that you see that might affect you in your life?
Capitalism.
Okay, there you go. So that would be a cloud in the sky. And maybe for, shits and giggles, give us one more.
Colonialism.
There you go. So those two clouds are actually on the diagram, along with, like, for example, homophobia, misogyny, racism, colorism, poverty. Like, we're all affected, right? So even the folks that you're talking about that have maybe resources and community around them and a certain level of safety, right? That allows them to live in this society, they're still affected by these social toxins. So that's kind of what I was saying about recognizing, the effect of how we're all impacted by this. So long story short, what happens is, okay, it's me. I come from a beautiful home, Daniel, right? Both parents, loved breakfast. I never really missed a meal, for example, right? But I still have to go into this world. And when I go into this world, things are either happening to me or being told to me that I have to process, right? For example, we could just take the police, for example.
Yeah, go ahead.
Unfortunately, when a police officer comes behind me or when I see a police officer, I'm still on guard. There is a tension that moves through my body as a Black man, no matter how much love and compassion of a home I came from. You see what I'm saying? There's still an energy and a toxicity that I'm dealing with. That accompanied with maybe racism or just whatever. I don't want to just go to the black and white because it's just so much deeper than that. You know what I'm saying? When we're talking about this toxin, right? Long story short, I internalize these things. My self-worth begins to shift. My worldview begins to shift through a lens of this toxicity I'm dealing with. I take this into my relationship with Daniel, right? Because of my past or because of what I was dealing with, I'm not really able to open up to you, right? I'm not really able to, be vulnerable with you. And that begins to affect our relationship. I may begin to lie. I may begin to do certain things that just really aren't really in my nature, but because of survival, they became my character and my behavior, right? We're talking about survival. So what happens is you have these individuals creating community. Right. We have a lot of unpacked, unprocessed, grief, we could say, or, just trauma or, whatever word we want to put on it. It ain't.
I'm big into terror right now.
Terror. You know what I'm saying? Like all of that, like for real, even unprocessed terror. Right. Like I don't have a conversation with my children every day, but my daughters and my sons, they feel the terror in the world right now. They know what's happening. So even for them, those toxins are raining on them. So people take these toxins and then they start to build institutions, right? So now these institutions are based on this worldview, right? Based on this, this toxicity, for lack of a better word. We're taking misogyny into these institutions. We're taking structural racism into these institutions. We're taking greed into these institutions, right? And what happens is these institutions, due to their factory, and that's kind of the whole thing in the diagram. It's like the clouds, the institutions create the clouds, right? And then it becomes this cycle, and everything is a secular thing. So I had to say all that to let you know why radical healing. Radical healing says, well, what if we did the opposite? You know what I'm saying? What do we want to rain down on us? You see what I'm saying? Equity. Love, compassion, truth, honesty, housing security, expungements. We can go as deep as we want. Like, what do we really want to rain down on us? And this is important because now we begin to imagine. See, one thing that I've been realizing working with the young people, right, and working in community is, there's this phrase that I've heard for years. The hood's never going to change. You can't change the hood. Things aren't, or whatever. It may not be the hood, wherever that situation, you can never change that person. And by default, that person will never change. That situation will never change because of the vibration that you're putting into it. You've already lost the imagination to want to change it, right? To even think about what it would look like for this institution to shift, for a society to look and live with individuals that have, are more compassionate. There's equal economic opportunities for all, things of these natures. So You know, I hope I'm explaining it properly.
You do. Like, can I riff? Can I just tag on that for a moment?
Yeah, come on in, because I saw your eyes get big, so I was like, I must have struck a nerve on that one.
Well, I work with, a lot of people, and often people who seemingly have everything. Mm-hmm. A 60-year-old, successful by all measures, semi-retired guy. Mm-hmm. Who just knows he's stuck and unhappy. And, he's done okay, but he's also been beat up by these same things.
Right.
His life is still smaller than he wants it to be. And, this whole thing about setting intentions for your journeys. Mm-hmm. So often these people come in and they're just like, I just don't want it to be like this anymore. I don't want to be scared. I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to be sad. And the idea of training people to even imagine positively. Yeah. I want to feel fearlessness. I want to feel safe and secure. I want to feel creative is just kind of flipping the languaging to see the possibilities is huge.
And like you say, in essence, reprogramming the mind, like all of these things, I feel what's happening right now is there's a lot of information. And I think it becomes this conspiracy theory melting pot, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, and I get it, right? But guess what? And for me, manifestation and the law of attraction is real. But it's not just I think about it one day and it happens. Like these things take work. And I think that's where we mislead the people. Like healing takes work. To attract something you want takes work. To transform your life actually takes a lot of work, right? We could take something as simple as, if I want the Zac Efron beach body, you know what I'm saying, that everyone's talking about, right? I got to do thousands of push-ups every day. 20 push-ups ain't going to cut it. You see what I'm saying? So there's work that's required if I want to reach that level. If I want to be a top chef, I should probably be cooking every day, right? There's work that's required. So same with healing, same with transformation, same with just being a better person. There's just some work that's required there.
Right? Same with integration. Right.
We get there. You go.
If you had a vision that like, we're superhero musicians and then just didn't do anything.
Right.
Who cares?
Right.
I'm talking to people all the time who get grand visions of their life of just, things they want to create and then people who they want to be. And it's like, being a better person, being kinder, more compassionate means sometimes being a little more patient, being a little more forgiving. You got to just do it in the moment.
Hey, Daniel, and guess what?
Tell me.
Starting with self, right? Mm-hmm. Like being more patient with yourself, being more gentle with yourself, being more understanding with yourself. Like, as a parent, it's real easy. Like if I could step out of my own way, which I encourage myself to do a lot. For example, my children's room be dirty. I'm upset. But wait a minute, my room dirty. So I'm like, wait a minute. It's like something's happening here, right? I could talk to my children all day, but these examples that I set are really going to be what they see. Like, are they going to see me washing the dishes? Do they see me showing love to my wife? Or is it more of a machismo kind of domineering relationship? Like, that's going to teach my daughters potentially how to engage with men. You know what I'm saying? Or engage with whatever partner they choose to be with, right? So when we're talking about how we relate, but the key to I want to say this before I move on from the radical healing. I feel like the key is the storytelling. The medicine is in the storytelling, right? And I think that's the magic of integration. When people are able to share, unpack, and have space held for them, like you say, to be vulnerable and just be their authentic self, speak their authentic truth. Right. And not to take advantage of that space now. I will say, like, you can't take advantage of the sacred. Right. And what I mean by that is things come up. But if I see you at the same integration circle, it kind of goes back to what you're saying. Is it the medicine and the circle? Right. Because I get it. That's community. That's what we want. I get that piece. We want that community. But what the world needs is for us to take those messages and those downloads, man. And that's for my opinion, that's what the plants want. Like, please take these messages and downloads and go implement them. We don't have to over harvest to get to this point of transformation, because quite honestly, we've been doing this work, like I say, for years. This radical healing work, without the plants. When I met Carlos with D-Crim, I was like, bruh, I think radical healing would fit perfectly with integration work on a sustained level, because now we're building sustained communities. Mm-hmm. What happened, what I was experiencing with a lot of our work is we were helping people get to a point of transformation, but they were most often going back into their community of trauma, whether it be their home, whether it be their neighborhood, whether it be their abusive husband or wife, mm-hmm. right? Like, you still have to go back to that situation. So how do we create containers and spaces for those people, right? And communities where it's like, okay, well, damn, I know what you went through. And I think that's what makes the integration circle so important and powerful. Going back to what I'm saying about the plant medicine.
It is helpful because traditionally, if you think about ayahuasca, it was traditionally done in a village setting, mm-hmm. in the jungle, and the shaman lived down the road. And if you were having a hard time with the ceremony over the weekend, mm-hmm. you just walk over to the shaman and maybe bring him a chicken, right. and talk to him for a while. And plus, the pace of life didn't change all that much. Right? So we have people from America who mm-hmm. have these high stress lifestyles going to Peru mm-hmm. and then coming back and being like, I want to go back to Peru.
Right, bro.
I got to get out of here. And it was like, well, like, when's the last time you walked in the park?
Right.
Like, when's the last time you touched a tree, man?
Look, you're giving me chills right now, because that's so real. Mm-hmm. And I remember the first time I went to Ghana. We was out there for about 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And my wife and I were just like, man, I hope we really don't romanticize Africa. I really hope we don't get here and it's just... And man, when we got there, not only was it beautiful, we didn't want to leave. But I remember the re-entry. And the re-entry is real, man. Just coming mm-hmm. back into the States. So, I love where I live, but there's a vibration here. There's an energy here. There's, mm-hmm. there's a frequency on this land, right? And we all feel it. We all know it. Like, even when we went up to Mount Shasta the other day, we're looking at purchasing some land mm-hmm. out near Mount Shasta. Ironically, which we found out was the root chakra of the of the earth. Y'all should do a little research if you don't know. I thought it was an interesting factoid. But saying that to say, even coming back into the city is hard.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about, like, that's a peak experience, for example, just being out in nature, being out in the woods for a week. Mm-hmm. Peak experience, right? You're settled, you're back in alignment. You might have been out there grounding or earthing with your shoes off. But mm-hmm. damn, now going back to what you just said, this hustle bustle lifestyle of, I got to make ends meet. I got to do this. I got to do that. This call, that call, this homework assignment. I do think it does do something to the integration of the medicine, right? And how we integrate the medicine. I will say, whether that's plant medicine, whether it's just earth medicine, whether it's just relationship medicine. Like my wife and I, for example, will go, have a honeymoon for 3 days, right? That's beautiful, peak experience. Mm-hmm. Guess what? It has nothing to do with the children. We still got to come back to do with life. There's still life. There's still demands. We can't be in that space forever. And I think that's the hard part. How do we integrate that love and bring that love back to our family, right? In the same essence, like, we had this experience. Okay, I had this experience with the plants. Now, how do I bring that back? How do I bring that love back?
And that is where things like somatic practices are so important. Because mm-hmm. even taking a few moments, because when you remember that, I'm guessing that when you were telling that story, you felt some of those peak feelings in your body.
For sure.
Right? And it's like, that's how we build resilience. And then... we start to program our tissues. We start to program our body to move in those ways, right? That's the kind of neat thing about this understanding of the default mode network now. It's like we realize...
Is that the tape, the loop that we're trying to break?
Yeah, the various patterns, tendencies of the mind, the way we think and see, and we, create our reality in these reality tunnels. Yeah. And then we step outside, and whether it's on a mountain, Shasta's a great place for it, or whether it's in some kind of ceremony, we're like, oh, wait, if I was just a little kinder and more creative, I would have different solutions to the same problems and things might work out better.
Man, it took me, as long as I've been doing music, I feel like my biggest Achilles heel, especially in hip hop, was not wanting to be as collaborative as I should have been.
Interesting.
Right. I feel like the music would have been further. There's a certain arrogance that you had to have. And as a youngster, yeah, I'm the one. No, we got the hottest group, man. Nah, we ain't doing that. So there's a little bit of that arrogance of a young man, but also just the arrogance of just being an MC. And as loved and as much love as I spread, that shadow area I felt crippled my music career. And I feel like we could have probably gotten to a lot more spaces without that mentality. Yeah, that could just be me looking back as an adult now, looking at some of the immaturity I had. But. Of
course. Well, that's part of how we grow. It's to be able to look at that stuff and not judge ourselves too tough.
True. Yeah, man.
So speaking of collaboration, this is quite a leap, right? You recently collaborated with Decriminalized Nature.
Yeah.
And
it's been a trip, man. It's an interesting path, man. Having a lot of emergence, a lot of emergence since we've connected.
Right. Yeah, I remember. I was talking with Carlos. I did a couple of events at the Haven last year when events were still a thing.
Right.
And I know that they passed the bill, and now they're working on some new things that will create perhaps more possibilities for people to have access to these things. And I'm kind of curious how you became a part of it, and how the song that you produced came to be.
Okay, so I gotta give you I gotta give it all to you. So there's a retreat center in Santa Cruz called 1440.
Yes.
And you're familiar with 1440. So we're doing a lot of radical healing workshops over the past year at 1440, building a strong relationship with them. We went up there for, Service Week, where they just bring up all the different community-based organizations and nonprofits and kind of just give you a time to kind of restructure what you're doing and kind of, recentering your work. And I met a brother up there, just randomly. He worked there. And, long story short, the second time we met, he was like, yo, what do you know about microdosing? And it just kind of blew my mind. I'm like, really? 1440? And it took me back to what Carlos was talking about how all of this is emerging. And it was just a confirmation for me that even though it's not necessarily happening on a large level of the conversation in my particular community, from NFL players to athletes to, veterans to, as I'm not going to preach to the choir. I'm just like, wow, folks is really, this is
one
happening.
Of my friends who's 77 and he's a 77-year-old screenwriter, and he was microdosing and watching the Democratic National Convention.
You see what I'm saying? So for me, it's happening. And I think that's kind of been the connection with Decrim, because I called Carlos immediately. I'm like, brother, I think radical healing would fit perfectly into this work that's happening in the psychedelic community, because I see it here. I see it happening here. There were actually, a lot of the work we were doing was really around how do we step into, I don't want to say necessarily affluent communities, but predominantly white communities, right? To really talk about, where are we at? What does equity look like? What does diversity look like? Like, we talk about these things, but I feel like there's levels to it. Like, there's a conversation happening up here, and it doesn't necessarily get down here to where, most of the people are impacted, especially if we're talking about philanthropy, if we're talking about even a retreat center as beautiful as 1440. The reality is my general peer group is not going to have access to that space. So we're having conversations around how do we create access to this space and really do the work for folks that also need it, right? There's a lot of people that can't afford it that are, just as deserving, if not more, right? These
Sure.
single mothers out here, these, frontline workers out here that are really fighting for our rights every day and things of that nature. So, the relationship with Decrim was formed from the awareness of what's going to happen after these peak experiences, and how can we create a really strong community and city based on these principles of healing-centered engagement, right? It was blowing my mind that it was something as simple as many of these workspaces, even if we're quote unquote, all transparency, no disrespect, it was happening at the Haven. People weren't even sometimes greeting each other and just saying, hi, good morning. Mm-hmm. That's part of just culture. Like when we're talking about culture, and that's the thing, radical healing is built on karma, which is culture, agency, relationships, meaning, and aspiration. And maybe we could do a separate podcast so we could go deeper into that model.
Gorgeous, yeah.
But all of these things are the pillars that create the radical healing model. So your culture is your superpower, right? Now, we're not necessarily always talking about ethnic culture. Like you say, just the culture of good morning, hi, how you doing, right? In the workspace is building a culture that says, I don't just walk through the door and go straight to my work desk. I actually walk to the door, I engage. Maybe there's a morning circle, everyone's online at 8:30. We say our affirmation, then we get to work. That's a culture, right?
I worked for the recycling department in college. It was sort of my school job was recycling and stuff. And she made us do like 15 minutes of yoga together.
I mean, that's beautiful. It's team building, man. It's
a little old hippie,
Exactly. She knows the importance of creating that culture.
Yeah.
So, like I say, what I saw in Decrim, and most importantly, let me speak directly in what I saw in the Black community, is we needed containers. Like we just can't say, okay, we're going to drop plant medicine right in the hood and, it's going to be cool and corporate. I feel like, in all transparency, that's just a privileged worldview. And I think that's the conversation that needs to happen when we're just decriminalize and I feel all that. But that's if you have the resources or community that can deal with any impacts of that, whether it be psychologically, whether it be, from the law, anything like that. So, I would like to see programs in our communities where, there's facilitators, but there's also just cohorts of people that are going through these ceremonies together, that are working together to further transform, because we've seen it work. Carlos, the Sankofa, you're talking about the Sankofa experience. I feel like that project was so powerful because it's working with the same community we've been working with for 20 years, who have all went through these. We've shared stories. We've, like I said, this is independent of plant medicine. We've had these peak experiences where extreme stories of trauma are coming out and we're holding space for each other, right? Crying, screaming, yelling, looking like we damn near having exorcisms in these rooms because, like you say, the somatic release is real. Like we tapped into where that is in the body. So now it's time for the body to release it, right? And like you say, I feel like this is nothing new. I feel like our ancestors always have walked with this information, similar to what you said about the village, the importance of having a village, the importance of being in community is just foundational.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm kind of undercover. I'm pulling a scam.
Talk to me. What you talking about?
I'm not promoting psychedelic use. I'm promoting meditation and healing for people who use psychedelics.
There you go.
This is just sort of the population that I'm working with right now. I've been a yoga teacher for 20 years,
Okay.
So it's just
yeah.
And it's just sort of but I have this background and this is emerging, like we were saying, this is emerging, and these people, and part of the reason I ended up as a yoga teacher was to support my mental health after doing a lot of psychedelics. And it showed me who I wanted to be. And it also sort of pulled me apart in a bunch of weird ways. And I was oh, I need to really focus on health and healing, both to come back to center and then to also travel from that center into my future.
Dope.
And so as we have these people doing this stuff, it's like, yeah, you need to, we want to take care. We have to rise and fall on our own merits.
Mm-hmm.
You know, being a psychedelic user isn't a protected status.
Right.
You know, it's like, if we're going to be able to do the things we want to do, we have to take care of each other.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I just side note, I think you should bring me Zion on here, or bring us both on here one day, because I think y'all would connect on the yoga. She actually did her advanced yoga training in Niroga, which is another practice out here dealing with really heavily somatics and breath work. But a lot of the similar concepts. I mean, she pretty much got into yoga to save her life. You know what I mean? Same thing, just kind of working to the point where we need something different to happen. But, you know, similarly, so when you're asking about, you know, decrim, like I told Carlos, I feel like this plant medicine stuff is already on a trajectory that I can't stop. I'm not here to stop or change, rather influence, right? I just want to just be able to just throw a voice in the pot that says, hey, consider this. This is some of the work we're doing. And we feel like it will be very valuable in your community. If something that you're not interested in, that's okay too. You know what I'm saying? Because the work won't stop. Like Spirit Works isn't necessarily centered around plant medicine. We're centered around similar, like you say, the tagline is intergenerational wellness. And we feel like plant medicine is a part of that. We don't feel it's the anchor to that though.
Right.
You know, so, but definitely though, going back to what you're saying about imagination now, you know, I think that's the beauty and the power of the plant. It can get you to that space where, okay, damn, I was stuck here for years. And just through that one experience, I was able to see different opportunities and possibilities. And even, you know, like you say, really come to amends. Well, you know what? Yeah, if I would have done that differently, or I was wrong there, and those be sometimes some bad trips, because you be in that space of, dang, okay. I got some work to do.
Well, that's also one of those clouds you were talking about, right? So I'm working with this theory. So tell me what you think about this. Is, you know, we get confronted. So let's say we're in the plant medicine space. We get confronted with mistakes we've made because the mushrooms, for example, actually makes our brains work better. Like we're actually smarter and more functional, and more creative. And so we see the mistakes that we've made.
Right.
Now, the thing is that the mushroom is agnostic about that. It's neutral and probably even compassionate, right? The thing is that we grew up in a culture where it wasn't safe to be wrong or make mistakes. And we have been criticized and blamed and shamed for making mistakes, so that when we go into the plant medicine space and we see that we made mistakes, it's horrifying for us.
Yeah.
But it's not the mushroom, it's the culture.
It's the culture. I mean, no. I mean, actually, it goes right back to the karma model for meaning, right? Meaning is important. Like, what meaning are we making of things? What meaning are we making of situations? What meaning are we making of our trauma? Like, are we letting our trauma? I mean, I feel like the meaning is that breaking point of, is the trauma going to transform you or destroy you? Right. I think just in how we view it and in that meaning. But you're absolutely right, brother. You know what I'm saying? It's that shame culture. Right. It's definitely a cloud. Shame is a cloud up there. Right.
Okay. Right.
But what's the deeper root to shame? Is it like, you know, I think it's shame, but it's something that causes the shame. So maybe it's lack of, you see what I'm getting at? Right. I feel like what is it that's triggering that shame within the culture?
I'm just going to regurgitate something. There's James Bradshaw wrote a book called Healing the Shame That Binds You. And, you know, he differentiates guilt from shame. He says, guilt is when you did something wrong. Shame is when you are wrong. And so like shame is like, oh my God, I must be broken. I'm flawed. I'm not good enough. And therefore I don't deserve love. You know, and the other things that go along. If I'm broken and not good enough, I'm not worthy, and I should not have love, nice things, care, support.
And therefore, I'm going to attract those things that I deserve. You know, going back to what we were saying about the law of attraction and all these, you know, these quote unquote pseudosciences. But I think that's kind of where those things step in. What is your vibration? If your vibration is shame, you're going to keep attracting quote unquote shameful situations to yourself.
And the sad thing about it is that it's one of the hardest things to see because it's so essential. Like we'll do almost anything to avoid looking at the fact that we feel like we're broken.
Yeah.
It's really one of the more painful experiences.
And then who, well, like you said, it goes back to meaning, because who defines what that looks like, right? Who defines what that broken looks like? Who defines what, I think all roads lead to self-mastery. It's going to be my new quote. I've been saying this for the past year. And what I mean by that.
Well, that reminds me of Sun Ra, but go ahead.
No, Sun Ra said something similar? What did he say?
Sun Ra said they were on the right road all the time. They're just going in the wrong direction.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So all roads lead to self-mastery. Hopefully you're going in the right direction.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. I think eventually to make that transformation, that's where you got to tap into. It's going to ultimately come back to self, because it's not out there.
Right.
I think we could take the healer, for example. And I love this example because sometimes the healer finds salvation through healing, but they're still quote unquote broken. There are certain things that the healer doesn't want to address, right? Within their own self. So I think it's this continual cycle. It's comfortable for me to be in space, holding space. I used to tell the young people this all the time. For me to show up for you as a Black man mentor, male mentor for 2-3 hours, oh, brother, I'm Superman. And I can be that. Because I know from 3 to 6 o'clock, whatever meditation I need to get into, whatever I need to do to prepare myself for these 3 hours. But, when it comes to my children, on the other hand, oh no, they see the good, the bad, and the ugly. They're with me 24 hours a day. So they're seeing all my shadow. They're seeing all the good. They're going to love me through and through. But what I'm saying is it's not a show. It's not an act. You know what I mean? So how do we get to, and how do I be okay with that?
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, because of course the levels of work that need to be done are very, very deep. Mm-hmm. And we can only do as much as we can do. Like alchemy is, it's one thing to be like, oh, just let it all go and merge into the oneness. Right. But the alchemist has a vessel that can transform as much stuff as it can in any given time. Mm-hmm. There is a certain physics to the metaphysics.
Right. Exactly.
And then how do we be kind with ourselves and not shame ourselves for that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Because that's a whole other kind of thing that is very, almost religious. It's like you should be better by now or something like that.
One of our elders that we work with, I'm not going to quote the numbers, but it's something like 60,000 negative thoughts a day. And that might be like something like maybe 5,000 positive thoughts, right? So with those ratios, just even if you're a quote unquote positive person, right, you're going to have to put some work in to retrain in the mind. You know what I'm saying? And, stepping into those spaces where you can feel different, because I do think it starts there. Like, let me start having this different thought. Let me start going here. Let me start seeing myself in a different light. And hopefully that will, reverberate outside of me. I think so often, sometimes we do go outside, we're thinking that it's out there. We're thinking that, whatever it is, we're going to find it out there. I'm going to do this next yoga training. I'm going to go to Peru. I'm going to go sit under the shamans in India. And you've had all these experiences. And then you just see this brother from East Oakland who ain't met he ain't left 5 blocks. And for whatever reason, this brother is reached in a different place, right? There's a different place that like you're learning from him now, with all of your experience. So kind of what is it? Like, what are we searching for? You know what I mean? I think is what comes up for me. Like, what is it that we're searching for?
I'm just meditating on that for a second.
You know what I mean? It's kind of rhetorical, because I think it's for everybody. It's for everyone. Like what you're searching for is going to be different. Right.
Well, and then the thing is, right, what the old saying is, coming back to the self is like, what you're searching for is the person who's searching. It's like what's looking is what you're looking for.
Yo, yeah.
And so
my brother says that all the time. My older
brother. Just chill? Can we just chill long enough to just let the tension and the not good enough relax? Do I need to hold that baby? He needs a nap. Does he need a hug first? Do you need a hug first? You are what you're looking for. You are what you're looking for.
You are what you're looking for. Yep. My brother used to say, my brother says it's slightly different. My older brother, he's also a yoga teacher. What you seek is seeking you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What you focus on is definitely gonna come to you. You got me thinking about, I'm looking at River right now, and River's kind of just observing. And I'm just thinking about the social toxins because I see that that's a loving house. I see that that's a loving, that wasn't like, shut that baby up, I'm doing an interview. That was, you want me to hold him? Come on, come get some of this love in here. You see what I'm saying? So I'm thinking about River, and I'm thinking about the rituals, really. Right. You know what I mean? When we're thinking about transforming the mind, I'm thinking ritual. And that's one thing I was going to say when I got stuck about 5 minutes ago. I think there's certain rituals that we have to have in place. I mean, and I say ritual, of course, routines, but what I mean by the ritual is it includes the intention, the breath, it's all encompassing. It's a practice that's all encompassing into an intentional result, so to speak, from my perspective. So I think those rituals become important. We, in my house, where we haven't been as consistent recently, but every night I used to have my children write an affirmation and they would decorate it. I would have, I'm a teacher. So 3 colors, you got to have 3 colors. I don't want no sloppy, just pencil. I'm just going to write something out. No, I want you to take about 5 minutes and put some intention into this. I'm great. I'm fast, whatever, I'm beautiful. I attract money, whatever it is. And then what we do is we put them on our door. So that's the last thing they see before they leave the house, just as a ritual. What I mean? We just put these affirmations around the house, different things of that nature. We used to hold circle every day where we had this affirmation that we would say just around love and love being the only power of our life. Because I had to trick them. I hate to say it, but it was brainwashing. I'm going to brainwash you with affirmation because I know every time you pick up that Instagram, every time you turn on that Netflix, anytime you go out into that world, there's going to be an opposite message that's going to tell you that you can achieve those things and that it's easier to just do this. So why don't you do this? Right? It's easy. Why don't you just be comfortable? You know what I mean? Just no, because we know that to become the person that you're wanting to be is going to, you got to go through the fire, man. It's going to take a little pain and struggle, I'm sure your first year as a yoga teacher isn't the year that you're at now. I'm sure there was some pain and struggle you had to go through.
Oh, I taught some bad classes. Some terrible classes.
Haven't we all? We all?
I mean, it's nice. You're talking about like raising kids as a ritual. It's really been some of the sweetest things. Just sort of, I understand why, like the Krishnas, for example, they dress the deities. They dress Krishna and they bathe them and stuff like that. And I'm doing that. I was like, I dress them and bathe them and it's adorable. And we go for little walks and it's just sort of like the day kind of gets structured around love.
There you go.
Which is really kind of nice because I got issues. I got issues and, I got negative thoughts that will rule my life.
Yeah.
And
we all do, brother. We all do. But then, like you say, it's like tapping into that. Like you say, everything's structured around creating an environment for this human being to thrive. Right? Like that's an intention that you set into, what you're doing. Like the intention, for example, wasn't not taking nothing away from anybody. And this is just talk, right? I'm just putting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people I've heard with an intention that says, I'm going to go get money so I could raise this family, right? So everything was revolved around this job and this money. And I think sometimes by default, you miss out. Like if I would have went on tour and just followed my rap career, quote unquote, brother, I would have missed out on so much. And I feel like my family structure would have been impacted by that.
Yeah.
I'm thankful that I stayed at home and navigated. It took some time. You know, I may not have been able to produce and perform on the level that I might have dreamed as a youngster, but what I'm experiencing with my family and watching them grow, brother, hip hop, you know, it's way bigger than hip hop.
Yeah, somebody invited me to join their psychedelic medicine startup that was going to be traveling around the world and doing ceremonies. And I'm not leaving the house.
Not leaving the house right now, man.
No, man, I just want to hang out on the floor.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got this. What do I need? What do I need with your 401k?
Yeah. And my homies used to hate it. They was like, you know, they actually stopped inviting me to the shows and, you know, like, well, you know, Sway ain't coming to the studio. I'm like, dude, I'll come, but I'm not hanging out at the studio for 4 hours, dude. Just I'll come drop my verse and do what we need to do. But, you know, now that they have children, it's like, Sway, I get you. I understand. This is my whole world. I was like, I tried to tell y'all. It was nothing personal. It's just, you just see what's really important. You know what I mean? You see what's really important. So, yeah, man.
So this has been fantastic. What did we miss? What did we not cover? That you feel like, I don't want you laying in bed tonight being like, oh man, I forgot to say that.
No, I feel like we need a part 2. And I feel like I've just created a new relationship. I feel like I got some expanded family in Colorado now. So I'm looking forward to coming to check y'all.
Well, I'm actually not in Colorado. I'm actually in Western Massachusetts.
Oh, you're in the okay.
I'm sort of in like the Sonoma of Massachusetts.
Western Massachusetts. Is it cold out there right now?
No, it's probably in the high 80s and it's kind of humid.
Okay.
And there's no smoke.
Wow. Yeah. See, I'm loving it right now, dude. It's crazy. I looked outside. It just looks like Mad Max out here right now in Cali.
Yeah. I mean, I've only been here a month. We left. We left the Bay a month ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Just decided to did you have family out there or what?
Her sister and her sister's wife live out here. And we thought that like, that would be a nice pod for River. You know, we had been like, we had been flirting with the idea for a while. You know, they really wanted us to live out here. It's cheaper to live here. You know, and there's and then after just kind of being in quarantine, it sort of made it motivated us.
Yeah.
And we knew that fire season was coming and all that kind of stuff. And we just sort of felt like this would be a sweet place to raise a baby. But, yeah, man, like, but beyond podcast part 2, it's like, you know, radical healing for integration workshops.
Just hit me up, brother. I'm telling you, I think that's really what my wife and I are passionate about, man. To be all the way transparent with you, just because we've seen it work, man. We've seen it work. We've seen it work without the medicine. We've seen it work without the plants. It's like, wow, there's really something about being able to, like I say, the medicine's in the storytelling. I could see you, Daniel, like the way that you facilitated this conversation was in a way that I could see you. You're not hiding behind Tam Integration. You're talking to me as Daniel. You know what I'm saying? I feel I was able to be vulnerable. Like what you were saying about if there's any questions, you know, there was no question that I didn't mind asking. Like I didn't feel like this was an interrogation. I felt like this was two human beings coming together to have a conversation. And I think we could probably definitely be on here another hour, you know, just talking, chopping it up, sharing stories. But as far as Decrim, I just want people out there to know that I think as far as human beings, there's always going to be a human condition. But I know the intentions of Decrim Nature are in the right place for sure. You know what I'm saying? And I just want to really say that on air. I definitely value the people I've been able to build relationships with and work with. And we're all learning. And no one's coming here like we are the answer. We have the answer. This is the best model. All we're basically saying is, hey, here's an option, y'all. Why don't we look at this model as well? And in the midst of this clinical model, in the midst of this, model over here goes another model. And just look at how this model might actually impact and really support communities that are most vulnerable, that maybe don't have the resources of some of these other communities, because ultimately that's what it's going to come down to. And I'm going to say that again. Folks that are, really just wanting to decriminalize and, all drugs, even. I heard some folks go as far as all drugs. And it's like, I feel the sentiment. I get it. But it's like, are we ready for that? Do we have containers in place for that? And well, we're going to have to get ready. All I'm saying is if you're talking like that and you're sitting comfortably, I want you to share those resources. Holler at me, call me, let's collaborate. Because I got folks and I got communities that let's do it. Let's go. And the reason I have to say this is because in 2020, and I hope, unpopular opinion, I'm going to say it now, unpopular opinion.
Oh boy.
You got to put your money where your mouth is, y'all. Like we can't just hide anymore. I'm sorry. We just can't say, well, what about the war on drugs and how this has been? Okay, well, come talk to me. Let's talk about how that's impacting. Because I got folks right now that are living, that are housing insecure, right? But are still on the front line working for humanity. So going back to your conversation, and Daniel, I just want to bring it back to that conversation, is I want those people and those individuals that are wondering, what can I do? One thing that you can do right now is just listen. Just listen to what the people need, without judgment, without assumption, and without a lens, but just with a mirror. What do these people need? What is the world saying? Where can, because from that lens, I feel like the answers are going to be easy. And it's not just resources. You know what I'm saying? It's not just money. I'm saying that in a very sarcastic way, so excuse that tone. But what I am saying is it's time to really not just give lip service. We're past the lip service. If we want to diversify the psychedelic community, let's do it. Let's not talk about, well, what about this and what about this person? Well, what is Tam Integration doing? No, it's what is Sizwe doing? What am I doing every day? Because I see what Tam Integration is doing. Tam Integration, from what I just saw, is trying to create the best home environment for this next generation to live, because that's our most important work, right? Like we're, you're
going to get me choked up.
I'm real, brother. I'm dead serious. That is the intergenerational wellness that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we get so caught up trying to change the world and smash the institution that we forget these simple things. Just these simple things. And I just want you to know that there's many people in the world, as you know, in these similar situations that they really want to provide that same opportunity for their child. But because of the social toxicity and because of whatever, they're just not able to do it. Mm-hmm. And then there's shame around that. Going back to what you're saying, I don't know any parent that's proud of not being able to provide for their child or provide a space for them. So that shame accompanied with social toxicity, media narratives that aren't true, and just a world of greed, it's just a recipe of just inequity.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It just, I smell like an inequity pie right there, but I want to keep the conversation going and keep up the good work, Daniel, and keep interviewing people, keep bringing in folks to speak their voice. I don't know how much time we got. At Spear of the Nation is my IG. Okay. And you can find us at Spirit Works on Facebook. Spear, like a spear. ITWURX is Spirit Works, and you can go to spiritworks.com to go to our website, or you could just find us on Facebook to see some of the work we're doing. Right now, we're currently working with the Oakland Museum around some of the protest art. I don't know if any of that was happening in Denver, but I know in Oakland, a lot of the buildings, were protected by protest art, same like in Portland. So we're teaming up with the Oakland Museum currently to create an exhibit that displays and in incorporation with the Sankofa project. So it's the Sankofa project in incorporation with this protest art. And then what happens is we're just going to use this as a vehicle for conversation. We want people to go through this experience and really talk about how do we unpack this systematic racism in America. And, would definitely love for y'all to come out if you could make it, once COVID lifts. And, we're looking probably like 2021, maybe even 2022, but just know that it's going to happen.
Right. And fall of 2020, radical healing for integration workshops.
For sure. And we could do those online, man. Why don't we talk offline? You could give me an email, or we got, we're connected through the phone. What I want to do is maybe set up a conversation, a meeting with me, you, and my wife.
Sure.
We could talk about how that could work,
we have a rich online community, people who are really comfortable with content online.
Dope. Okay. Yeah. And that's one thing I will say about this whole COVID. And I'll be honest, I was the first one talking about New World Order. I was like, man, this is some New World Order, brother. The mark of the beast is coming. About 3 months later, I was like, you know what? I like Zoom. That's cool.
Man, I was worried about the New World Order in 1999.
Exactly,
I was sure that Y2K was going to do it,
Exactly. All these little conspiracy theories. I learned about Illuminati in 97, right? So when I'm looking at all these youngsters talk about Illuminati now, it's funny.
The medicine told me that I was the conspiracy. That all of the saints, sages, gods, and masters had conspired for eons to manifest love in the world through me.
Wow. There you go.
And I'm not special. What else it told me is it wasn't special, that it was also doing it through you.
Ashe. And I think it's funny. It's meaning, right? It's meaning. And when we're talking about conspiracy.
Well, and aspiration.
This is a question I had, because I was thinking about like ancient, we're talking about Kemet or like ancient Egypt.
Okay.
There was, why was some language only known by certain people, certain knowledge? Like, why is it always like that? Why is there always gatekeepers of the knowledge? And, folks that just don't, because it kind of goes back to what you're saying about the conspiracy theories, right? So I think some people, there's like conspiracy theories, but then there's also like, well, this is actual knowledge, but it's written in this language or it's written in this way. You can only access it this way. And I think this has been going on from the beginning of time. So just curious as what you think that is, because I don't think that has anything to do with capitalism. Is that just the human condition?
I think that, well, I have knowledge of how to dice onions. Like, I can dice onions really, really fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to give River access to that knowledge. He's just not ready for that.
Not ready for it.
And you can call me the oppressor or not, but I feel like I can see pretty clearly that that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
I think I forget who said the best secrets are secrets because if you told somebody, they wouldn't understand it or believe you anyway.
There you go. I can see that. And then, like you say, there is a certain level, but there does come a point where it's like, all right, got to share that knowledge, man, because we are ready. Like, do we really want to know? Like, if aliens is real and all of that, like, do we really want to know that this whole world is a matrix program and all of this is a hologram, right? Like, when we're talking about all those things, are those things we really want to know? Because that's kind of what you're saying. Like, do you really want to know the truth?
Well, and then the thing is how is it relevant if I'm in a simulation? The interesting thing about simulation theory that just really upsets me is that everybody's worried about like that house or that car is a simulation, or the things that I see are a simulation, that people act like everything is fake but them. right? You act like if I unplugged you from the Matrix, you'd wake up and you'd have the same hat on in a different dimension. You'd still be the same guy. Right? Whereas what we need to understand about the simulation is that like Dan and Sway are simulations.
Right.
Like I'm just sort of like, there's a bunch of desires and perceptions and memories, and I just round that up to Dan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I act like I'm the only solid thing in a world of fakery.
That's the ego.
Yeah.
And that sounds like the ego right there. That's real, man, because you're hitting it on the head. You're hitting it on the head. And then it's going back to just, have you ever seen What the Bleep Do We Know?
Oh, years ago. That was one of the first things like that.
Yeah, I love that film. And it's the same thing you're talking about. Like you said, there's really no out there that's not in here. Right. So everything that's inside of here is just being manifest outside of me.
Yeah. Like who are the guys in black suits and sunglasses kind of constructing my personality?
Exactly. Exactly, bro. Exactly. But hey, man, what are next steps? Like how, do you got the song? Because I would love to maybe shoot a link to the song. Actually, Plant Power to the People is on all platforms right now. So if people go to Spare the Nation, you go to iTunes, you go to, wherever,
we'll put it in the show notes and stuff.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
And so next steps, what do you want people to do? Like if people want to, if you have like a word of advice or some field work for the listeners, what might that be?
I think I mentioned it earlier in the interview. I think right now, just mirror work. I want folks to work on that mirror as opposed to the lens. Even with Trump, right? There's a lot out here. There's a lot of polarization out here. And I think the more polarized we are, it's harder to navigate and move, move from a space where we can all win, move from the win-win. Mm-hmm. I think it's always going to be a win-lose. And I think if we can move more towards the win-win, no matter how impossible as it may seem, maybe that's where some of that imagination comes in.
Right.
But, I know just even with Kamala coming into the mix, I just think so much polarization on Facebook, like within the past 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And, I think it's all good dialogue, you know what I mean? But I think after a while, I think there's this trolling culture that's been created. And I just think it's just unhealthy. So, if you're out there to troll, just check in with self, you know what I mean? Just use that mirror. And then also let's start dreaming big, y'all. Let's meet each other where we dream. Let's imagine something new. Let's imagine things we've never seen, imagine systems and structures, that we might have not seen before. I think that's kind of what makes this Ochi initiative that we're talking about in Oakland pretty powerful. And I know it's getting some criticism. And I think a lot of the criticism is coming from folks potentially feeling left out of the process. And that's okay. You know what I'm saying? What I mean is it's okay to feel that way. But what I want you to know is that no one's trying to intentionally leave anyone out of a process, from my opinion.
Well, it's just, people get together and do things. Mm-hmm. And then people are like, wait, you're doing things? It was like, oh, right. I mean, I saw in one of the threads where there was some contention is that everybody who complained was invited to come to a meeting.
Yes.
We
talked and, even the town hall and I got to be all the way transparent. I kind of lost my cool just a little bit. I was supposed to be mediating. I was like, yo, I got this, y'all. I got this. But then when I started seeing just some of the stuff in the comments and some of the questions, I kind of felt like folks just had a closed mind to begin with. And I feel like we can't even really engage from that space. We can't really engage from that space. Like I want to lift this up and I don't know where this is going to land, but let's not use, I see it a lot in the Bay. Let's not use political jargon and hide behind political jargon. Let's just do the work. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of phrases, what about POC and what about this? And how are we incorporating this and that? It's like, folks in the Bay, the psychedelic community, you've had years before Ochi came out. And I don't know if folks was that passionate about getting POC involved and getting other things involved. I don't know. I could be talking out the side of my neck, but I know that I wasn't invited to be a part. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is, just because
I invited you the second I knew you existed.
Exactly. but and that's the thing. I think what I'm saying is this: let's not take advantage of this opportunity because it is a sacred opportunity. Right. I think that's what I'm saying. The opportunity that we're presented with right now is very sacred, and we should treat it as such.
Yes.
Let's not just do workshops around racial healing just to do it. Like, let's really do the work that's required, because like I say, once again, you're going to have your workshop. That's the peak experience. Now, after that workshop, that's when your work comes in. That's when my work comes in, right? This integration work. Like, what does this look like now? I remember even Steven was talking about it, a little earlier, about some of the work that they're doing with, around racial equity and things in Colorado. So the work is happening. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's support that work that's happening instead of trying to create a new wheel, right? We don't have to create something new. Let's collaborate with those that are kind of already doing it and see how we can, expand that message, so to speak, with a unified front. You know what I mean? Because what happens is, you have a group that might pop up. Oh, who are these folks, man? I've been doing racial healing work. I've been doing racial equity work for the past 5 years. Who are you? Like, that right there, even though it's a natural human response, it's just so unproductive.
It's very unproductive.
So unproductive. It's like, man, I get it, y'all. But these folks are doing work now. And also those new groups that come in, my advice is always check the ecosystem, because I think you have to check the ecosystem. Like, you can't just step in and say, this is what needs to happen, and this is because I'm the bomb and we have been doing this work for years too. Let's just check in with the ecosystem. Who's doing the work? How's the community feel about this? Does the community even want this? And that's kind of what I lifted up. Like, you're saying that the community wants the radical healing model, and I'm going to take your lead on it. I don't want to force feed nobody. I'm definitely open to share, but I don't want to force feed.
Well, the 4 people who are commenting on the feed want it.
Oh, okay. I didn't see the chat. Is it in the chat box?
It's on Facebook.
Oh, it's on Facebook. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's follow up to those 4 people. It's all good, and we're gonna work it out, man. And and again, like, I'm not trying to put myself at the at the front of the cart. It's like I want to learn about it. Like, I want to be a participant. I want to create a thing that I want to be a participant in. Yeah. Well, for sure. I mean, we actually got a workshop that we do. It's already locked and loaded. And like I say, maybe that's something that we just come on and do next time and just kind of share it with the folks. And, so we can really take a deeper dive into what is this radical healing model? Because really, I feel like it's a piece to the puzzle. It's not the answer, but it's definitely, I'm 100% positive.
Wait. I thought you had the answer.
Nah. Exactly, right? Exactly. But it's definitely a piece of the puzzle. It's a very potent piece, because it allows me to see you for who you are. Not a podcast facilitator, not an integration worker, but Daniel, a man or a human being with a family, with a child that's trying to make some change in the world. If I could look at you from that lens, as opposed to, okay, where do we align? Where is this? Because at the end of the day, we all align with love. I think at the end of the day, we align with, I want my family protected. I think that's going to be in the Black community and the most Aryan white nationalist community that I could find. I think that value is going to be in both communities, that I value my family. Right. I value and love my wife and children and, my babies. I think we're going to find that value around the world. So let's move with that assumption that everyone wants that. Everybody wants clean water. No one really wants to live on the street. Like, you making a choice. I don't think anyone is just really making that choice. I think poverty substance abuse and trauma can lead to some of those choices, especially if they're unprocessed. But I don't think anyone's just waking up like, this is how I want to live. Come on, man. We got to move past that. You know,
Wait, there's people who think that that's a choice.
Yeah, and on certain levels, it is a choice, but it's a choice based on some other things, right?
Yeah, lack of being resourced.
You know, that
like not a lot of other like options, diminishment of options, I would guess.
There you go, options, or even the possibility of options, right? Even if you don't think other options are possible, which is real. So, you know, I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think step one is looking at the mirror and saying, I love you. And what am I going to do today? You know, this is what am I going to do different today? I think that's step one before I go say, well, this is what I need to do different. Even with my children, you know what I mean? Before I step to them, I got to make sure that, is this a lens or a mirror? You know what I mean? Am I projecting onto them something that I see in myself that I don't want them to inherit? Or am I really looking at them as the whole person, reflecting on myself and coming more from a space of giving a lesson? Like, here goes some advice. Here goes an experience I had. You know, this makes me think of this experience. You know, maybe try it differently this way. You know, so you're doing the most important work right now, man. As many integration circles as you could hold is important. I'm not taking nothing away from that work, but the most important work is right there. That's the
look in the mirror and say, I love you.
That's look in the mirror and say, I love you. Look, man, I know folks, that's hard to even look in the mirror. That's work. That's step one of let me just look in the mirror and just accept that I'm beautiful, accept that I'm powerful, accept that I'm, you know, worthy of something more than my circumstances might allow. Right. So that's a part of that work. So when we're talking about healing and transformation is kind of soft, which I hear a lot, like our people don't need healing. We don't need this. I'm like, man, that's hard. That's hard. My wife did a workshop with these young girls back in the day, and it was so hard. She didn't want to take her socks off. The young sister didn't want to look at her feet. She just thought her feet were ugly. And just the process of being in circle with a group of young ladies and actually having her feet washed by the community and loved on, powerful. But just to think like that person did not like their feet. They didn't like themselves. They didn't love themselves enough to be like, look, my feet. It's just something that simple. Right.
There's a cloud.
There you go.
Foot hate. Yeah. Body shame.
Body shaming. I mean, foot hate is hilarious, but body shaming is real. As I'm looking at, once again, the IG. You know, I'll be on my daughter. I'm like, man, I don't want you on that thing. And Dad, you raised me to love myself. Dad, you raised me. But yeah, I also got to remember Mia though, because there's these social toxins out here. Mia was the sister in the diagram that was walking through the social toxins. But, you know, and that's always a balance and a struggle for me. Like being okay and knowing that I have planted some seeds, but also knowing that, it's a lot that we're fighting out here. It's a lot. It's the war is for is for your spirit and your mind. That's the battle. Can you keep your spirit and your mind in the midst of all of this and still be who you are? You know, at least at least have the agency to create who you want to be. That's the war right there. It has nothing to do with the bullets. It has nothing to do with all of these. Because even if we have armed struggle, destroy the institution, you know, take out whoever government official, we still have to create a world. And if all of them social toxins and the residue of that is still with us, all we're going to do is create the same world that we was trying to escape from.
Speaking of storytelling, there's so many stories where that happens.
Yeah.
Where the institutions all fall and people just scurry to build the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Even that, what was it called? The autonomous zone in Seattle.
I heard about this. I've heard. So talk to me.
You know, when all the protests were happening and I believe, you know, some protesters took over 6 blocks in Seattle or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, this is going to be a paradise autonomous zone without police.
Right.
And 4 days into it, people are running around with machine guns. People are beating each other up over perceived infractions. You know, there were a couple of hippies in the corner, like trying to plant a garden, but for the most part, like it got kind of dark, kind of quick. And I was like, oh yeah. I mean, that's wild.
Yeah. I mean, that speaks heavily to, okay. So I guess in closing, it speaks to this. So the radical healing model and like even the intergenerational wellness work, we like to operate. It was 3 quadrants, but we added a 4th. So it's the 4 eyes, and this is an easy way to remember it. I'm sure some of this I'm probably preaching to the choir. You already know this, but it's the internal level, the interpersonal level, institutional, and ideological. All of these levels need to be engaged. Right. It just can't be the institution because we still have the ideology, the interpersonal, and the internal. Right. So we can smash this institution, but if I still feel that women are less than me and don't deserve rights in this world, that's going to be a problem as we try to build this new world together. That's the value that really can exist to build a strong future. Right. But if that's not dealt with and unpacked, and then you might have groups of folks that, hey, this is just our culture. We're not changing, Sway. And, you know, me and my 100 folks are cool with this. So guess what? You know what I'm going to say? Cool. That's your culture. Your culture doesn't have to infringe on what we're doing. We don't have to infringe on what you're doing. But see, that's the problem when it comes down to resources. Folks want to start expanding, right? Let me expand land. Let me expand over here. Let me trade here. Or, look, I need help. Okay, yeah, we'll help you, but you got to adopt this philosophy now, right? You lose your autonomy. You want some of our help? You're going to lose all of your autonomy. And, you know, I'm not going to go there, but, you know, what is it? The spoils of war. You know, we're taking everything. You know, we're taking your women. We're taking your resources. We're taking, you see what I'm saying? This is a mentality. This ain't nothing new. This is in the history books.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it's complicated.
It's exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying, is that this is very complicated and all roads lead to self-mastery. Right. So if we can walk that path to, like you say, just becoming better people, you know, on you know, for our own, then maybe we could be better partners in our relationships, therefore creating stronger family units of love, therefore creating stronger communities of children that engage with each other in a certain way, that create, you know, institutions that, you know, are more sustainable towards the liberation path, you know, more towards a path of, okay, not only are we working with each other in a better way, we're even interacting with the planet better. Like there's less litter. I mean, the lakes and the rivers are clean and there's food is abundant. And, you know, I think it all plays together, right? Because when we're coming from that place, we're not really coming from a greedy place. You know, I'm sure the earth will be less impacted. Because that came up with the whole thing around over harvesting, like especially around ayahuasca and peyote.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
And for me to even think about peyote being over harvested, to me, that's a problem in itself.
Yeah.
Just because peyote, you know, whatever, just because it's decriminalized and you can utilize it. So what, you just run up on the land and take it? I'm just trying to get clear on that. Like, to me, that shouldn't even be an issue. Like, in my mind, it's really like, I'm really trying to wrap my mind around that. Like, if you know that this is already a limited commodity on this planet, a limited resource on this planet, you know.
Well, I mean, have you seen the harvest where people who aren't, you know, traditionally, you know, your pod, as it were, pod is a new word, right?
Right, exactly.
Your pod would go out with the pod leader and you would find your peyote and you would do your ceremony. And now, you know, it's a business. It's commodified. People are going out and they're the peyote farmers, and they're not farming it. They're just stealing it from the land and profiting off of it.
See, that's horrible. That's horrible.
It's a bummer.
That's horrible. And like you say, I guess, is there any accountability for these people? Does it matter? Because one thing I do know is if that's happening, right? And I know there was some energy around Decrim's stance on that peyote, but I felt like Decrim was being held accountable and not the folks that is actually engaging in the quote unquote peyote poaching.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? For lack of a better term, it's like if it's happening now, then it seems like there needs to be advocates that's advocating for that. And I'm sure there are. I mean, there's probably someone on this podcast right now like, well, so that work is being done. I'm sure it is.
There are organizations with, the Peyote Conservation Council and things like that. Like they exist. And those are some of the people who are having conversations with the different decrim groups about, inclusion of peyote and how do we watch out for making policies that might lead to over harvesting kind of things.
Yeah. Like I say, I think some things are written,
mm-hmm.
And I think certain things are just culturally implied.
Right.
I think like it goes back to the
well, that goes back to the secrets. Right. You're talking about the secret knowledge that not everybody has access to. When things are implied, you're saying that it's a secret knowledge in some ways.
Okay.
Right. Like you should know that. You should know that like this, like we all know this. Why don't you know it?
Yeah. You know what? That does sound a little arrogant. Forgive me. I'm gonna go process that. And sit with that a little bit. Thank you for lifting that up. Mm-hmm. I think what I'm saying is if we value something as sacred and we know it's sacred, why not treat it as such?
Mm-hmm. Now we have to define we.
Well,
because you're talking about these cultures and this culture believes this thing and this culture believes another.
I'll go use your word now, complicated, right?
Yeah.
Because it blew my mind when I found out that sage is actually being overharvested. Right. And I've actually stopped buying sage over this past year. Fortunately, I'm growing some in my backyard.
That's the thing is you can grow sage pretty easy if you want.
Exactly. So, I haven't really bought sage in a very, very long time. I mean, similar to the Palo Santo, right? Like how is it that these things are just being over harvested? Like, geez, what's the education? Maybe it's an education thing. Maybe it's just more education that's required around it. It's not like, I don't know.
Well, because we're disconnected with the earth. We're disconnected with the source of things.
Yeah, there you go.
It's kind of like if you came face to face with the production of your phone, you'd never own one.
Whew.
Because that's so terrible. That's horrific.
You could say that again. I mean, it kind of got me thinking about like when I talk to my children, I'm kind of still holding down the vegan vegetarian side of my family. I think everyone's kind of, they were raised vegan vegetarian, but I'm not trying to limit their options. I want them to explore because I don't want them to go completely opposite when they're older. But my thing, it just got me thinking like, I really want them to slaughter their own animal because I think that'll change everything. Right. Just as that process. And I think I noticed it the first time when I went to France. When I went to France, I saw chickens with feathers and feet still and beaks. I was like, I'll never see this at an American meat market. Not in Cali. That stuff is packaged and manicured and chopped up right. And I'm basically saying that you're disconnected. It creates more of a consumption model as opposed to a relationship model. When you have to kill your food, slaughter your food for subsistence, I feel like that's a different relationship to what you're eating. And, it's going to be hard to kind of overharvest that. But if it's the corporate model, just hamburger, everything packaged, just eat. I feel like that's kind of where we get some of those issues.
Yeah. I'm a little depressed now.
Sorry, brother. I'm sorry, brother. It's okay. Real though, brother. I was like, yo.
Yeah, no, I can manage. Yeah, indeed. And so, teaching people to be more connected with the land and where things come from. And, one of the things that I learned in yoga school, it's like non-stealing is one of the things. and recognizing that like everything we have came out of the earth in some form or another.
Yeah.
Like all of our possessions are gifts, they're either, are they stolen from the land or are they gifts from the land? And so it's like, how do we relate to our possessions? And how do we relate to the act of receiving?
Right.
And, do we kind of take out the entitlement that, maybe I'm entitled to stuff just because I have the right amount of tickets to have it. Like I can trade, I have the things that entitle me to the other things.
Right.
And to what extent is that more toxicity? Like, whereas I can become, to tag on to the idea of the ritual, is the food I eat a ritual? Is the medicine I take a ritual?
There you go. That's it. And then just thinking about, brother, you hitting on so much, bro.
You are.
You're touching on so much right now.
You.
That's why I said, look, we 30, I said it about 35 minutes ago. I was like, we probably could be on here another hour. But it's just, that's the piece, man. When we're talking about decrim nature, it's like, what's our relationship to nature? I think folks missed that in the entheogens conversation. It's like, yes, it's about the plants, but really it's about our connection to nature. And how do we just connect back to the source? We know that the source is nature. We know that these medicines are within that source, but it also goes beyond the medicines. You know what I mean? I think even as I'm talking to Carlos, when I first met him, I feel like his position has shifted just a little bit, or not shifted. I would just say expanded, right? Just understanding that, like, yes, it's the plants, but it's actually, that's just like almost 10%. You know that iceberg picture where you got the iceberg and it's the cliff up top, right? And you see it sticking out the water, but underneath it, you have all of this iceberg left. That's kind of how I feel about, this world of psychedelics is we're really scratching the surface. And, like even for me, I've never had like a 10-gram mushroom journey. So, I heard y'all mention that earlier, and I've been hearing about even your brother over at Zydor recently, and he was talking about his 40-gram journeys. I'm just like, I just never thought of just, even Kalinde, Baba Kalinde, rest in peace. You know what I'm saying? Just tapping into the ancestry and astral planes, with the medicine and really just utilizing it for what it is.
Yeah. And there's, really interesting and amazing things are possible that we don't, this is one of the reasons why I think mushrooms are so wonderful, is because they're so sustainable.
There you go.
There's not a drag on nature really. It's something that somebody can take care of themselves in with their closet, and in that ways, it almost defies commodification. The commodification is only a function of prohibition. Right. The fact that it's illegal and the information is hard to get, the stuff is hard to get. But, if it was, legal and decriminalized and everybody had their own shoebox,
right,
we'd be producing more than we could ever eat. There would be an abundance, and it would just be a bunch of people that had mushrooms in their freezers. And so that's really great. That's really good news for the world. It's sort of unlike most other things, it is, and so unlike our normal scarcity model. We're having a conference. I'm having a conference next month and Kalindi's wife is speaking.
Oh, dope.
It's called the psilocybin. I'll give a shout out to my own thing if you don't mind, real quick.
Yeah, come on.
It's called the Psilocybin Summit. Okay. And it's 4 days, actually 5 days online of celebrating the myth, magic, science, and culture of the sacred mushroom.
Show me a link.
Yeah, I will. psilocybinsummit.com. And if you go to psilocybinsummit.com/TAM, you get 10% off. Okay. And Kalindi is speaking, and a couple of the other speakers from the Detroit conference. This woman named Acacia, who is one of Kalindi's students, and I think she's an astrophysicist.
She blew my mind. She blew my mind. She was the way she was talking, was just, it was a trip. What about Brother Oyi?
OE is not scheduled. Abdul is scheduled. He was also there.
Okay.
OE seems great. I didn't. We were scheduled before I was aware of his work.
Yeah, no, it's good.
But yeah, her talking about her, 30-gram trips and working with this 150-pound crystal and staring into the center of the cosmos and talking to the consciousness of the galaxy is stuff we need more of. We need to heal PTSD. Mm-hmm. We also, I think, need to be having conversations with the consciousness at the center of the galaxy.
Right.
And they might even go hand in hand.
It's all of it. It's all of it. I mean, I just want to definitely give a shout out to Detroit, man. That the conference was dope. So I had the privilege of going to the conference. I actually presented at the conference as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on the nice. This kind of what we're talking about now: radical healing, community integration work, and just dope, man. Just very humbled to be in the space, and at the same time, it also felt like home. It felt like I was talking to Brother Oye and some of the other elders there. Mm-hmm. That it just feels like a community that I'm a part of back at Oakland. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it's just beautiful to see.
It was fun. I made some friends on Instagram, just looking at the pictures and following the hashtags and commenting on stuff. And now I got a couple of buddies who are, I think, live in Detroit. Who are doing that work.
And it's just like that. And it's just like that. Just meeting new people and expanding. I think that's been the beauty about this journey is that just being able to just meet new people, man, and just see what folks is at. Hopefully give and exchange some information and, hopefully, like you say, leave something with you and others that might help you grow. And likewise, I'm looking for some gems to help me grow.
Yeah. What does the cutting edge of consciousness on the planet look like? Like who are the people really pushing, the light forward?
Yeah.
Like those are the people that, that I want to click like on their pictures on Instagram.
Right. try to check in with them for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, brother, my wife gave me the eye right now. I don't know.
Oh, you better go
on the podcast, but I appreciate the time.
Me too.
And like I say, I think next time maybe we could bring her on. We could talk about some of the work we've been doing with somatic healing as well, and just kind of that yoga journey and kind of how we're incorporating breath work into a lot of what we do. We've actually realized, at least, she's known it, but I'm coming to a realization over this past year, just the power of the breath, and that just learning how to breathe, knowing how. That's probably why you was able to do that 10-gram journey, because you're a yoga instructor. That breath work is important. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. The breath, we got to know how to breathe.
You didn't see me in the middle of it. I don't know. I don't think.
You go ahead.
I don't think I made it look good.
Okay. I don't think I would either, brother, to be honest with you.
But it changed my life. It changed my life for the better.
That's dope. That's dope, man. Hey, any final questions from me, or do you need me to leave any info? Or like I say, just let folks know about spiritworks.com. Like I say, the Instagram is @SpiritTheNation. I actually got a dope music video dropping next week. The trailer's dropping today. What I'll do is, Daniel, I'll send you the link directly when the videos drop, and you can share it with
the link directly. Yeah. Facebook, a lot of this stuff gets disseminated through Facebook as well. So that's always a good place. But thank you so much. This has been like, Steven actually texted me. It was like, yo, this conversation's dope. So at least, the people on the page seem to really enjoy it. I really enjoyed it. I could, again, go on for hours.
I didn't know what to expect, but I'm thankful that I'm here for sure.
For sure. Right back at you. Thanks for your time. Many blessings.
All right, Daniel, Skylar, Steven, thank you. Talk to y'all soon.
Thank you to the whole team. Thank you to Deadheadland and Livestream Remote. This has been Instrumental Breakthroughs Podcast. We love you.
Yeah. And shoot me a link too. I want to see the playback.